The night my mother-in-law smiled while pouring tea all over my wedding album, I realized something terrifying. They didn't just hate me. They wanted to erase me. And for 3 years they almost succeeded. But what they didn't know was that one phone call was already on its way. And when it came, everything they built to destroy me collapsed in a single day. If you've ever been made to feel small, invisible, like your own life was being stolen from you, then stay with me, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens when the person they thought was weakest becomes the one who holds all the power. Before we begin, hi, I'm Hannah Miller, and if stories about karma, justice, and standing up to toxic people speak to you, make sure to like and subscribe, because some stories don't just entertain. They remind you that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Now let me tell you exactly how they ruined my life as their daughter-in-law. And how one call changed everything. The first time I met my mother-in-law, Linda Carter, she hugged me tightly. Too tightly. Her nails pressed into my back as she whispered in my ear. You seem sweet, but you'll never be good enough for my son. She pulled away smiling. As if she'd just complimented me. I should have walked away that day. But I didn't. Because I loved Daniel. And back then, love made me blind to red flags that were practically screaming. Daniel was charming, attentive, warm. He used to bring me coffee before work and kiss my forehead like I was something precious. He always said, "My family is a little intense, but they'll love you once they get to know you." They never did. The moment we got engaged, the real nightmare began. Linda suddenly inserted herself into everything. Wedding dress choices, guest lists, venue decisions. Every suggestion I made was met with a polite smile and a cutting comment. "Oh, sweetheart, that's cute, but it's not very classy. You don't want people thinking you came from that kind of background." That background. Her favorite phrase. Because my parents were middle-class school teachers, not wealthy business owners like the Carters. And in her world, that made me inferior. Daniel always said, "She doesn't mean it like that." But she did. And I knew it. Still, I convinced myself I could endure it. Because I believed marriage meant building something stronger than outside opinions. I had no idea I was walking straight into a trap. The wedding day should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it was the first time they publicly humiliated me. During the reception, Linda stood to give a toast. She smiled at the crowd. Then said, "Marriage is about knowing your place, and Hannah, well, we all hope she learns hers quickly." People laughed awkwardly. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. But he didn't say anything. That silence, that was the first crack in our marriage. And it only got worse. After we moved into the house Daniel had grown up in, everything changed. Yes, we lived with his parents. Temporarily, Daniel said. But temporary turned into years. And inside that house, I wasn't a daughter-in-law. I was a servant. Linda criticized everything. The way I cooked. The way I cleaned. The way I dressed. She'd inspect the kitchen after I cooked and loudly sigh. "Oh dear, I guess some people just aren't raised properly." Her husband Robert was worse. He didn't insult me directly. He ignored me completely. As if I didn't exist. And Daniel, he kept asking me to be patient. "Please, Hannah, they're old-fashioned. Don't make this a big deal." But it was a big deal. Because day by day, they were stripping away my dignity. And Daniel let them. The worst moment came 2 years into the marriage. I'd just been promoted at work. It was a huge achievement. I came home excited, heart racing, hopping to celebrate. Instead, I walked into the dining room and heard Linda laughing. She was on the phone. Talking about me. Yes, she got promoted, but honestly, who knows how? probably because they needed diversity hires. I froze. My hands started shaking. I realized then. They didn't just dislike me. They despised me. They wanted me to fail. And when I confronted Daniel, he sighed. Actually sighed. "Hannah, you're overreacting again." That sentence broke something inside me. Because in that moment, I realized I was completely alone. The sleepless nights started after that. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was disappearing. Like every insult was slowly erasing who I used to be. My confidence, my happiness, my sense of safety, all gone. And the worst part, I kept trying to win their approval. Cooking more, cleaning more, staying silent more, because some small part of me still believed if I was perfect enough, they'd accept me. But toxic people don't want perfection. They want control. And I was about to learn that the hard way. The final straw came 3 months later. It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I came home early to surprise Daniel with dinner. But when I walked in, I heard voices in the living room. Linda, Robert, and Daniel, talking about me. Linda said, "She's holding you back. You deserve someone from our world." Robert added, "You could still get a clean divorce. No children, no shared assets. Think about your future." Then Daniel said something that made my heart stop. "Maybe you're right." The plate slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. They all turned. And in that moment, I saw no guilt on their faces. Only annoyance. Like I was a problem they hadn't finished removing yet. That night, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Because I realized something devastating. They weren't just trying to break me. They were planning to replace me. And that's when everything changed. Because 2 days later, my phone rang. One unknown number. One call. That would destroy everything they had built against me. And that's where my revenge truly began. The call came on a Wednesday morning. I remember because I was sitting in my car outside the office, gripping the steering wheel, trying to stop my hands from shaking. I hadn't slept the night before. Not after hearing Daniel agree that maybe I should be replaced. That sentence replayed in my mind over and over like a cruel echo. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Each repetition felt like a knife pressing deeper into my chest. I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything that made me me. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it. Unknown number. I wasn't in the mood for spam calls or wrong numbers. But something inside me whispered, "Pick up." So I did. And the voice on the other end said, "Is this Hannah Miller?" My throat felt dry. "Yes, who is this?" There was a pause. Then the man spoke in a calm, professional tone. "My name is Mark Sullivan. I'm calling from Sterling Financial Legal Services. We've been trying to reach you regarding an urgent matter connected to the Carter family estate." I frowned. Estate? What estate? My heart started pounding. "I think you have the wrong person," I said slowly. "No, ma'am," he replied. "You are listed as a primary beneficiary in a legal trust that was activated last week." I actually laughed. A short, bitter sound. "That's impossible," I said. "There must be some mistake." Another pause. Then he said something that made the air leave my lungs. The trust was established by Elena Carter, Daniel Carter's grandmother. I froze. Because Elena Carter was the only person in that family who had ever treated me with kindness. She had passed away 3 months earlier. And Linda had told everyone that she left everything to Daniel. I felt my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I don't understand," I whispered. That's why we need to meet, he said, because according to the legal documents, the majority of her estate was left to you. Silence filled the car. My fingers tightened around the phone. My brain couldn't process what he was saying, because it didn't just sound unlikely. It sounded impossible. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a small spark ignited. For the first time in years, I felt something other than pain. I felt curiosity, hope, and something darker, something sharper, power. That evening, I sat across from Mark in a quiet office. He slid a thick folder toward me. Legal papers, signatures, official stamps, everything real, everything undeniable. As he explained, my mind kept drifting back to Alina. She had been frail but sharp, quiet but observant. She used to hold my hand during family dinners and whisper, "Stay strong, dear, I see more than they think I do." I never understood what she meant back then. Now I did. Mark cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, "your mother-in-law was aware that Alina updated her will last year." My stomach dropped. "She knew." "Yes." He hesitated before continuing. "And according to our records, she attempted to contest the will immediately after Alina's passing." A cold chill spread through me. "What happened?" "She failed," he said simply. "The documents are airtight. Alina left detailed written statements explaining her reasons." He opened the folder and pointed to a page. I read Alina's handwriting with trembling fingers. "Hannah is the only one in this family who shows kindness without expecting something in return. She deserves protection, she deserves independence, and most importantly, she deserves a life free from their control." My vision blurred. Tears slid down my cheeks. Because in that moment, I realized something devastating and beautiful at the same time. Someone had seen my suffering. Someone had believed me, even when I was too broken to defend myself. Then Mark said the sentence that changed everything. "The estate includes substantial assets, including majority ownership in Carter Holdings." My heart stopped. Carter Holdings. That was the family business. The empire Linda worshipped. The source of their wealth. Their pride. Their power. My voice came out barely audible. "What does majority ownership mean exactly?" He looked directly at me. "It means, Mrs. Carter, you now hold controlling shares." The room went silent. I felt like the world had tilted. Because in one single moment, the powerless daughter-in-law they mocked had just become the most powerful person in their world. But instead of feeling triumphant, I felt terrified. Because power doesn't just give you control. It forces you to choose what kind of person you want to become. And for a long time, I wasn't sure I was strong enough to use it. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Daniel slept beside me, breathing softly, unaware that everything had changed. I watched him in the darkness, and memories flooded back. The man who used to hold my hand. The man who slowly stopped defending me. The man who chose silence every time I needed him to speak. I realized something then. The worst betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the moment someone who promised to protect you chooses not to. Tears slid into my hairline. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel helpless. I felt calm, cold, focused. Because I finally understood something. They had spent 3 years tearing me down. Now fate had handed me something they could never take by force. Leverage. And I had to decide what to do with it. The next weeks were torture. Because I had to pretend nothing had changed. I still woke up to Linda's criticisms. Still heard Robert's dismissive grunts. Still endured Daniel's emotional distance. But now, every insult sounded different, because behind each cruel word, I knew a secret they didn't. A ticking clock, a coming storm, and the longer I stayed silent, the stronger I became. But then something happened that pushed me past hesitation. One evening, I came home to find my belongings packed into boxes. My clothes, my books, my personal things, all stacked near the door. Linda stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. Her smile was ice cold. "I think it's time we all faced reality," she said calmly. "This marriage isn't working. Daniel deserves a fresh start." My heart pounded. I turned to Daniel. He couldn't even meet my eyes. "I think a separation might be best," he muttered. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not violently, quietly, like a thread finally breaking after being stretched too far. Because in that moment, I understood the truth. They hadn't just planned to destroy me. They believed they already had. And that belief, that certainty, was about to become their greatest mistake. I looked at the boxes, then at Linda's satisfied expression, and for the first time in years, I smiled, not out of politeness, not out of fear, but because I finally knew something they didn't. They thought they were ending my life. They had no idea. They were about to lose everything, and I was going to make sure they understood exactly why. I still remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid of them. It was when Linda said, calmly and confidently, "You should leave with dignity, Hannah. Don't make this ugly." Ugly. That word echoed in my mind. Because for 3 years, ugly was exactly what they had made my life. The constant humiliation, the emotional manipulation, the quiet erasure of my worth. And now they wanted a clean ending. A simple exit. As if I had been nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. I looked at the boxes stacked near the door. My clothes folded carelessly. My photo frames tossed in without protection. My wedding album half sticking out bent. Something inside my chest hardened. Not rage. Not even sadness. Something colder. Clarity. Because in that moment I understood something powerful. They weren't afraid of hurting me. They were afraid of losing control. And they had no idea. They already had. I took a slow breath. Then I said calmly, "You're right, I will leave." Linda's smile widened. Daniel exhaled in relief. Robert didn't even look up from his newspaper. But then I added quietly, "Just not the way you expect." Linda frowned. "What does that mean?" I smiled. A small, controlled smile. "You'll find out soon." And then I walked upstairs. For the first time in 3 years, I walked through that house without feeling small. Because now, I knew I held the power. And they didn't even realize it yet. That night I called Mark. "I'm ready," I told him. His voice was calm but firm. "Good," he said, "because what happens next requires precision." And precision was exactly what I wanted. Because this wasn't going to be revenge fueled by anger. This was going to be justice built on strategy. The next few weeks became a blur of legal meetings, financial briefings, and confidential planning sessions. I learned things about the Carter family I had never known. Things that shocked me. Because their empire wasn't as strong as they pretended. Carter Holdings was drowning in debt. Robert had made risky investments. Linda had secretly borrowed money to maintain their lavish lifestyle. Daniel, he had no idea. He believed the family business was stable, powerful, untouchable. But the truth was, it was hanging by a thread. And that thread was now in my hands. Mark explained everything carefully. Once you formally claim your controlling shares, he said, you can call for an emergency board meeting. My pulse quickened. And then, you can legally restructure leadership, he replied. I swallowed. You mean to remove them? Yes, he said calmly. Including your husband. The room felt very quiet. Because even after everything, that word still hurt. Husband. A title that once meant love. Now it meant betrayal. I closed my eyes briefly. Memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding vows. Late-night laughter. The early days when he looked at me like I was his whole world. Then the slow shift. The silence. The indifference. The moment he chose his parents over me. Over and over. When I opened my eyes again, my voice was steady. Let's do it. But the plan required patience. And patience meant pretending nothing had changed. So I packed my belongings quietly. I moved into a small apartment across town. No confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. Just silence. And that silence confused them. Because they expected tears. Begging. Anger. Instead, I gave them calm. And calm made them uneasy. A week later, Daniel called me. His tone was awkward. Are you okay? I almost laughed. After 3 years of ignoring my pain. Now he was asking if I was okay. Yes, I said simply. There was a pause. Then he said, I think this separation might be good for both of us. His voice sounded relieved. Free. Like a weight had been lifted. And that hurt more than anything else. But instead of reacting emotionally, I just said quietly, You're right, Daniel, it will be good for both of us. He had no idea how true those words were. Meanwhile, Mark and I prepared for the board meeting. It had to be perfect. Every document, every legal motion, every financial record. Because once the meeting started, there would be no turning back. And I knew exactly how I wanted that moment to unfold. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with undeniable truths. The kind that leaves no room for escape. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching city lights flicker in the darkness. My heart pounded steadily. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Because tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the people who spent years making me feel powerless would finally see the reality they never imagined. And as I sat there, one thought kept repeating in my mind. They thought they broke me. But they were wrong. They didn't break me. They forged me into someone they would never be able to control again. The next morning I dressed carefully. Simple, professional, confident. Not to impress them, but to remind myself I wasn't the scared daughter-in-law anymore. I was the majority owner of Carter Holdings. And today, they were going to find out. As I entered the company headquarters, my heartbeat echoed in my ears. Every step felt heavy with meaning. Because this building, this empire, this symbol of their power, was now mine. And in a few minutes, they would have to face that reality. I reached the boardroom door. My hand hovered over the handle. Inside I could hear Linda's voice. Confident, commanding, completely unaware of what was about to happen. I took one slow breath. Then I opened the door and stepped inside, ready to change everything. The moment I stepped into the boardroom, everything went silent. Linda was sitting at the head of the long, polished table, her posture straight, her expression sharp and authoritative. Robert sat beside her, flipping through documents with the bored confidence of a man who believed nothing could threaten him. Daniel was there too. He looked tired, distracted, unaware. And then he saw me. His eyebrows shot up in confusion. "Hannah," he said, "what are you doing here?" Linda turned sharply. For a split second, I saw pure shock flash across her face. Then it vanished, replaced by cold irritation. "This is a private board meeting," she snapped. "You don't belong here." I didn't respond. I simply walked forward, placed my folder on the table and sat down. Right across from her. Calmly. Deliberately. As if I had every right to be there. Because I did. Robert finally spoke, his voice dripping with annoyance. "I believe my wife just asked you to leave." I looked at him steadily. "No," I said quietly. "She didn't ask." My voice was steady. Controlled. And something about it made them all pause. Because this wasn't the same Hannah they remembered. Not the quiet one. Not the apologetic one. This version of me didn't look afraid. Linda leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I opened the folder, then slid a stack of documents across the table toward her. "I'm claiming my seat." Her fingers froze when she saw the legal stamps. The official signatures. The heading. Majority shareholder transfer authorization. The room fell into a thick, suffocating silence. Daniel looked between us, confused. What is this?" he asked. Linda's face slowly drained of color. Her lips trembled as she scanned the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Her hands started shaking. "That's impossible," she whispered. Robert snatched the papers from her. His eyes widened as he read. "No," he muttered. "No, this can't be right." I watched them calmly. For years I had watched them with fear. Now I watched them with clarity. Daniel's voice rose, panicked. "Someone explain what's happening." I met his eyes. And said softly, "Your grandmother left me controlling shares of Carter Holdings." His face went completely blank. Like his mind refused to process the words. That's not possible," he said weakly. "It is," I replied. "And as of today, I am legally the majority owner of this company." Silence crashed into the room like a tidal wave. Linda suddenly slammed her hands on the table. "You manipulated her," she shouted. "You tricked a dying old woman." Her voice was shrill. Desperate. I didn't flinch. "Actually," I said calmly, "she left a written explanation." I slid another paper toward her. She read it. And this time, her hands began trembling uncontrollably. Because the words were unmistakable. Elena's voice clear even in ink. "Hannah deserves protection from this family. She deserves freedom from their cruelty." Linda's mouth opened. But no sound came out. For the first time since I had known her, she had nothing to say. Then I delivered the final blow. "I'm calling an emergency leadership restructure vote," I said evenly. Robert looked up sharply. "You can't do that." "Yes," I replied. "I can." I leaned forward slightly. "And I am." The legal advisor standing near the door cleared his throat. "As majority shareholder," he confirmed, "Mrs. Miller has full authority." Daniel's breathing became uneven. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "Hannah, please," he said quietly, "we can talk about this." His voice trembled. But something inside me felt strangely calm. Because now he wanted to talk. Now he wanted to fix things. Now that the power had shifted. And that realization hurt more than anything else. I met his eyes and said softly, I begged you to talk for 3 years. He looked like I had slapped him. The vote took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to dismantle the control they had built over decades. Robert was removed as financial director. Linda was stripped of executive authority. Daniel lost his leadership position. Just like that. No shouting. No chaos. Just legal signatures. Cold. Final. Irreversible. Linda's composure shattered completely. She stood up suddenly, her chair screeching loudly. "You think this makes you powerful," she hissed. "You think this gives you a family." I rose slowly. And for the first time, I stood eye to eye with her. "I never wanted your power," I said quietly. "I only ever wanted respect." My voice didn't shake. Because I wasn't speaking from anger anymore. I was speaking from truth. "You could have had a daughter," I continued softly. "But instead you chose an enemy." Tears filled her eyes. Not of regret. Of rage. And fear. Because she finally understood something she never imagined. She had lost. Completely. Daniel approached me slowly. His face pale. His voice barely a whisper. Was this your plan all along?" I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "My plan was to build a life with you." His eyes filled with tears. "But you destroyed that," I added gently. "Not me." He broke then. Actually broke. Because in that moment, he finally understood the cost of his silence. I walked out of that boardroom feeling lighter than I had in years. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Free. Because revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about reclaiming myself. And I finally had. Months later, Carter Holdings stabilized under new leadership. I stepped back from daily operations, choosing a quieter role. One that allowed me to rebuild my life. On my own terms. Daniel tried to reach out many times. But some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And I learned something powerful through it all. The worst prison isn't made of walls. It's made of fear. And the moment you stop being afraid, you become unstoppable. If this story reminded you that silence isn't weakness, that patience can be power, and that karma sometimes arrives quietly but hits with undeniable force, then don't forget to like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the strongest revenge is simply becoming untouchable and walking away with your dignity intact.